The lantern was already turned low when I heard the bed rope creak behind me. Outside, the wind was pushing dry leaves against the side of the house, a soft scraping sound, like somebody dragging a hand along the boards. I had come in late from the barn that night. My shirt still smelled of hay dust and horse sweat, and my hands were cracked from cold water at the pump. I remember standing there with one boot off and one boot still on, thinking only about sleep and about my wife waiting in the room behind me. Then she said 2 words, "Not tonight." She did not say them sharp. She did not say them with anger. She said them tired, and that made them heavier. I did not answer right away. A man can make a bad choice in the space of one breath. That is what I learned later. And what the bishop told me the next morning has stayed with me longer than the shame of that night. My name is Jonas. I am an Amish husband, a father, and the head of a household that I am still learning how to lead rightly. I share these stories because there are things a man only understands after he has been corrected, after he has sat quiet long enough to hear truth without defending himself. If this plain story helps you think about marriage, faith, and the weight of a man's choices, you are welcome to stay with me. And I would like to know, before this is over, whether you believe a husband is strongest when he gets his way or when he learns to listen. This happened 12 years ago in late November, when our oldest was 7, our second boy was 5, and our little girl had just turned 2. It had been a hard season on the farm. We had lost 2 calves in 1 week. The oats had come in lighter than we hoped. A wheel bearing on the manure spreader failed when I needed it most, and I spent half a day in the cold mud trying to make old iron behave like new iron. My wife, Anna, had been carrying her own load inside the house, and I did not see the full weight of it. That is the plain truth. I saw supper on the table. I saw clean shirts on the line when the weather allowed it. I saw children washed, bread baked, jars moved down from shelves, dishes stacked and put away, quilts shaken, socks mended. I saw the work after it was done, which is not the same as seeing the person doing it. Anna was quiet at the noon meal. I remember that now because I did not notice it then. She set out potato soup, bread, apple butter, and a small plate of pickled beets. The children were restless. Our second boy knocked over his cup. The little one cried because the bread crust was too hard. I said something about needing the boys to learn stillness at the table. Anna looked at me, then looked down again. She did not argue. I took her silence as agreement. It was not agreement. By the time I came home from helping a neighbor free a wagon sunk near the lane, the last light was gone. The kitchen windows were warm yellow, and for a moment, standing in the yard, I felt the old comfort of seeing my own house lit against the dark. A man can mistake that comfort for proof that all is well inside. Supper was simple that night. Fried potatoes, leftover soup, cold ham, bread, and molasses. The children were tired. I was tired. Anna moved slower than usual. When she reached for the kettle, her hand trembled a little. I noticed that. I noticed it and still did not ask. After supper, I went back out to see to the animals one more time. When I came in again, the children were asleep. The house was quiet except for the stove ticking as it cooled and the wind at the windows. Anna had left a basin of warm water for me by the back door. I washed my hands and forearms, rubbing the dirt out of the cracks in my knuckles. The water turned gray. I dried myself on the towel and looked toward the bedroom. There is a kind of expectation a husband can carry without naming it. It is not always spoken, but it enters the room before he does. I went in. Anna was sitting on the edge of the bed in her nightdress, her braid over one shoulder, her hands folded in her lap. She looked smaller than she usually looked. Not younger, smaller. Like the day had taken parts of her and not given them back. I sat beside her and reached for her hand. She let me hold it, but her fingers did not close around mine. That should have told me enough. I said, "I missed you today." She nodded once. I leaned closer, and that was when she said it. "Not tonight. 2 words, quiet words, tired words. I wish I could tell you I answered with kindness. I wish I could tell you I saw my wife clearly in that moment, not as the woman who owed me closeness, but as the woman God had given into my care and beside my life. I did not. I pulled my hand away. Not hard, not dramatic, just enough that she felt it. That is a cruel thing, to make a small movement carry a punishment. I said, "You have been far from me for weeks." She looked at the floor. I said more than I should have, not loud enough to wake the children. That almost made it worse. Quiet bitterness can cut deeper than shouting because it pretends to be controlled. I told her a man comes home tired too. I told her marriage was not meant to be lived like strangers. I told her I was trying to hold this house together. She did not cry at first. She sat still. Then she said one sentence that I can still hear. She said, "Jonas, I am not your field to plow when you are weary." That stopped me, but it did not humble me yet. Pride can take even a true word and twist it into insult. I stood up and said nothing. Then I took my blanket and slept on the bench in the front room, as if I were the injured one. In our church, we do not carry every private matter to the bishop. Marriage has its own room, and not every difficulty belongs in another man's hearing. But the next morning was Sunday, and after the service I found myself unable to stand beside Anna in the gathered room without feeling the weight of my own conduct. Our bishop at that time was an older man named Eli. His beard had gone white at the chin, and he had a habit of listening with his head slightly turned, as if he wanted to hear not only the words but the place they came from. I did not plan to speak to him. I only meant to shake his hand and leave. But when he looked at me, I felt known. He said, "You are carrying something crooked today." That was his way, plain, no decoration. I told him I had spoken poorly to Anna. I made it sound smaller than it was. A man often confesses the part he thinks will make him look sorry, while hiding the part that would make him look wrong. I said we had disagreed. I said I felt pushed away. I said I had slept in the front room. He listened. Then he asked one question. "Did she say no?" I looked down at my boots. There was dried mud on the left heel. I remember that because I stared at it like it could answer for me. I said, "She said not tonight." He nodded once. Then he was quiet for a long moment. We were standing near the woodpile behind the house where service had been held. Men were moving benches. Children were running near the lane. Somewhere nearby, a woman laughed softly. The whole world seemed ordinary, and I was standing there being opened up. Bishop Eli said, "A wife is not less your wife when she is tired." I did not answer. He said, "And a husband is not more a husband when he takes what comfort costs her." Those words have followed me for 12 years. He did not accuse me of things I had not done. He did not shout. He did not shame me for being a man with needs or for wanting closeness with my wife. That was not the lesson. The lesson was sharper because it was fair. He told me that marriage is not a claim ticket. It is a covenant. And a covenant does not give a man permission to stop seeing the person in front of him. I remember trying to explain myself. I said I had been working long days. I said I felt alone in my own house. I said a husband needs to know his wife still wants him. He listened to all of it. Then he said, "Then ask to be known. Do not demand to be comforted." That sentence undid me more than the first one, because that was the truth under my anger. I did feel alone. I did want to know I was still loved. I did want some place in my own house where the weight could come off my shoulders. Those were real feelings. But I had carried them to Anna like debts she had failed to pay. I had not said, "I am weary." I had not said, "I miss you." I had not said, "How are you holding up?" I had stepped into the room with expectation already written on my face, and when she could not meet it, I punished her with coldness. Bishop Eli told me to go home and do 3 things. First, apologize without explaining. Second, ask what she had needed from me that I had not given. Third, do some of her work that week without making a show of it. I remember that last part because it stung. I wanted spiritual counsel and he gave me chores. But that is often how repentance begins. Not with a feeling, with a basin of dishes, with a child carried so his mother can sit down, with boots taken off before mud crosses the floor, with asking before assuming, with keeping your mouth shut when your pride wants one more sentence. When we got home that afternoon, I took the horse into the barn and stayed there longer than I needed to. I was afraid to go inside. I could face a skittish horse, a broken axle, a field full of stones. Facing my wife after I had made her feel small was harder. When I came in, Anna was in the kitchen, cutting carrots for stew. The house smelled of onion, lamp oil, and damp wool drying near the stove. I stood near the door. She did not turn around. I said, "Anna, I sinned against you with my words last night." The knife stopped moving. I wanted to say because I was tired. I wanted to say because I felt pushed away. I wanted to say because I have been under strain. All those words rose up in me like men rushing to defend a gate. I did not let them out. I said, "I am sorry. You did not deserve coldness from me." She stood still for a long moment. Then she set the knife down and put both hands on the edge of the table. Her shoulders shook once. Not a sob, just the body letting go of something it had held too long. I asked her what she had needed from me. She turned then. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. She said, "I needed you to notice I was tired before I had to refuse you." There it was, not a complicated thing, not a mystery hidden from men, just a truth I had walked past every day because the bread was baked and the children were dressed and the shirts were clean. That week I did what the bishop told me, not perfectly. A man should not turn one correction into a story about how quickly he became righteous. I failed even while trying. I forgot things. I grew impatient. I wanted praise for work Anna had done for years without praise. But I began, and slowly something changed between us. Not all at once. Marriage is not repaired like snapping a board back into place. It is more like mending a harness strap. You clean the leather, you check where it is cracked, you stitch carefully, and then you do not overload it the next day just because it is holding. Anna began to speak more plainly. I began to hear sooner. There were still nights when one of us wanted closeness and the other needed rest. But the words changed. They became honest instead of guarded. I learned to ask, "Are you with me tonight, or do you need peace?" And she learned she could answer without fearing a cold room afterward. A home can look peaceful from the road, while one person inside is learning to disappear. I do not say that proudly. I say it because I know how easy it is for a man to think leadership means being obeyed, being served, being satisfied, being respected without question. But in our faith, a husband is not called to be the heaviest stone in the house. He is called to carry weight in such a way that others can breathe. That does not mean a wife never gives. Anna has given more to our marriage than I can count. It does not mean a husband should bury every ache and pretend he needs nothing. That would become its own bitterness. It means the way we bring our needs matters. A need offered honestly can build tenderness. A need carried like a demand can bruise the person we claim to love. There are nights now when I come in tired, and Anna is tired too. The house is quieter because the children are older, but work still fills the days. Sometimes I still reach for her hand and feel whether she closes her fingers around mine. I learned to pay attention to that. A hand can tell you what words have not yet said. And when she says she is weary, I believe her. What I understand now is simple. A husband's strength is not proven in the moment he gets what he wanted. It is proven in the moment he is told no, and he still protects the warmth of the room. Any man can be pleasant when he is pleased. The measure comes when he is disappointed. I wish I had learned that without hurting Anna. I did not. That is part of the truth, too. Some lessons come with a face attached to them, and if you have any decency left, you remember that face. So when I say the bishop's words still haunt me, I do not mean they torment me every day. I mean they guard me. They stand at the doorway of my pride. They remind me that the woman beside me is not an answer to my loneliness, unless I am also willing to be shelter for hers. If this story stayed with you, I invite you to subscribe and sit with more of these plain stories from Amish life. And I would like to ask you this: in marriage, in family, in any close bond, what do you think matters more when someone says, "Not tonight"? The answer itself, or how love behaves after hearing it?